back to the Everything Went Black podcast. I'm sorry, but it's been a while. I've been out on tour for the entire month of November. Got back and sort of just got right into preparation for recording the new album. And it's been taking up a lot of my time. That and basically just kind of syncing up with the everyday life. You know, you sort of get into this vibe when you're out on the road, eating at Denny's every day, staying in hotels, playing shows, not sleeping, driving across the country, and just kind of living this renegade lifestyle. So you're going a million miles a minute, you get home, and everything stops. So it's a little bit of an adjustment to get back in the swing of things. And, here I am in time for the holiday season. Being on the road during the election was kind of interesting, to say the least. We were in Atlanta, Georgia on the night of the elections. And, there was no one at the show. Everybody, that's assuming anyone would have been at one of our shows in Atlanta anyway. But, the vibe was that everyone was glued to the TV set, watching the elections and slowly observing Donald Trump overtake Hillary Clinton. As everyone knows, he's now a president-elect. The fucked up thing is that he actually lost the populist vote, which indicates that we really need some reforms when it comes to the elections in this country. And if the only thing that we get out of this is that things need to change, maybe that's good. In times like this, I keep thinking about Michael Chandler, the lightweight champion in Bellator. He had the title once before and lost it, went into a 3 or 4 fight winning streak, and looked like he was about to get cut. And he basically changed himself around and reinvented himself and won the title back. And I remember listening to an interview with him on the MMA Hour. And he was saying that, was that even a bad thing? Look at all the good things that happened as a result of me losing the title. So whenever I'm faced with situations like this, where I feel like my back's against the wall, there's no way out, I might as well give up, might as well throw the towel in, I think about that interview I heard with Michael Chandler. And maybe that's one of the situations. Maybe we're looking at our fucking president. I hate it's with such vitriol that I say that word referring to Donald Trump. And maybe, as fucked up as it seems, maybe something good can come out of this. Maybe something's going to change. Maybe there'll be a race war. Maybe there'll be some riots. Maybe someone will overthrow the government. I don't know. There's actually all these conspiracy theories about saying how this is actually a New World Order plot. It was a conspiracy to get Donald Trump in there. And there's going to be an outside, a non-domestic threat that's going to take over our country. Anyway, this is getting far into the realm of, tinfoil hat, style. So I'm gonna kind of stick with the script here. And maybe this will bring about reform. Maybe people will start paying attention. The one thing I have to say about Republicans is they show up. They definitely stick to the plot. They show up and they vote. I can't really say the same about Democrats. According to some stats that I saw, Democrat voting has been decreasing over the last 10, 15 years. So that's what happens. This kind of leads into some points that I want to bring up too. I try not to get into politics. I'm not the most well-versed person to be speaking on these topics, but all I can say is there's things I've observed in the last year. The preoccupation with certain things that I just don't think were as critical as avoiding the Antichrist taking over our country. Some of those things are, and I hate to use the term social justice warriors, but this preoccupation with gender pronouns, using the correct gender pronouns, cultural misappropriation. These are all very important things. However, I don't think they're as important as voting for the correct candidate. And I'm not saying that Hillary Clinton was the correct candidate. But I feel like the left and progressives and Democrats are just have been distracted by all these the static. And look, hey man, I support whatever your decision is. I want you to be exactly who you want to be. I want you to manifest your destiny. I want you to be able to walk freely through this land, representing whatever gender you want. I support all that stuff. However, I think that it's kind of whack to alienate people and, just be preoccupied with this stuff. Look what happened. Everyone was not everyone, but there was a vibration amongst progressives that this was like the most crucial thing. This gender pronoun vibe, this cultural misappropriation, and this basic oversensitivity. And I think that sort of speaks to a society where we don't have any real threats. And when we do have a real threat, we choose to ignore it. We choose to bury our head in the sand. We choose to find things that are not challenging to us to spend our time focusing on. Anyway, that's all I have to say about politics. And I never thought it would happen. And, we were finishing up our set in Atlanta, and it was about midnight. It was a little bit after midnight when we were, wrapping it up. And I remember, when the house lights went on and I was back packing up my gear, I was like, man, I wonder who won. And based on the reaction I saw around me, I knew that the answer wasn't the answer that I was hoping for. And like I said, I don't support Hillary Clinton, but I support Donald Trump less. And that's a fucked up position to be in this country where you're voting for the lesser of two evils. And I'm not saying it's the right thing to do to vote for Hillary Clinton. We have other candidates. We have other parties. Money runs this country. And that's why most people think that we only have two options. And hopefully in the place in history that we're at right now, this will lead to some kind of reform and people start paying attention to these other parties out there. I'm not saying that any of those candidates are viable either. I personally was a Bernie Sanders supporter. I didn't believe he had a chance of winning the presidency, but I threw my lot in with Bernie. He said a lot of things that made sense to me. And I just knew that he wasn't going to make it. And that's a pretty cynical way to look at things, but, that's how I saw it. And the comedy of errors, the tragic comedy of errors that was the 2016 presidential election, it seemed like it was the plot out of a dark comedy, and like it was in part of some game. And those of you out there who believe that we are living in a simulation, this is actually proof positive that there's probably some pimply-faced 16-year-old kid controlling our destiny. So yeah, I don't know. It's a lot to think about. And we were in the southeast, and probably not the most forward-thinking part of this country. I spoke to some folks as we traveled through the southeast, and they were good people. Saw the situation for what it was, but it was a real eye opener, and it gave me a lot to think about on this last trip. And so I don't know. We're rounding out 2016. This year flew right by, man. I'm telling you. You hit a certain age and the years just start flying. Time flies. And yeah, man, enjoy your lives, because the years keep going quicker and quicker as time goes on. I didn't mean to start off on kind of a bummer, but yeah, this episode is just going to be me. I figured didn't want to go too long without dropping one of these, and hopefully Paul Delaney from Black Anvil will be joining us for one more episode of 2016 before we turn the calendar over. And I just feel like I owed you guys one. Talk some shit. It's the end of the year. Go over some lists that I wrote up, and just kind of keep things rolling. The new Black Anvil album is getting ready to be dropped next month, and I'm real excited about that. Those guys are great friends of mine. And Tombs and Black Anvil have played many, many shows together, and I hope to continue doing that into the future. So yeah, their new record's coming out on Relapse next month, and I've heard the entire thing. I wrote a record of the day for Bandcamp, which will be shown, seeing the light of day, hopefully around the time the record comes out. And the record's great, man. It's got all the things you love about Black Anvil's other albums, plus some more. One of the things that I picked up on the most about it is this sort of old hard rock, heavy metal influence. I can hear like some Scorpions, like old Metallica riffing. Yeah, that kind of stuff, as well as like, brutal black metal and like kind of rock and roll, blackened rock and roll, I guess. And so yeah, I'm looking forward to that thing coming out. Looking forward to holding an LP vinyl in my hand. And, maybe I'll catch those guys on the Mayhem tour. I believe I'll be home in time for that. In other news, Tombs will be entering the studio next month down in Manus Studios with Eric Rutan. Eric recorded Savage Gold, and this will be the second time around for us, and I'm really looking forward to it. These last few weeks were spent just kind of like tidying everything up, tightening up the guitar playing, finishing up lyric writing, doing a lot of practicing on my own, and finishing up a demo that I recorded at Chapel Black, which is the Black Anvil studio. And actually a couple days ago, yesterday was Sunday, today's Monday, so yeah, yesterday, I finished up all of the all the vocal tracks and backup vocals, and I had Charlie come down and sing, and Rafe put some backing vocals on, and probably gonna have a mix of this demo probably by the end of the week. James is gonna be mixing it. James Van Dusen, good buddy of ours, and yeah, it sounds great. Or I mean, I'm satisfied with it. I like it. I don't know if any of you guys will like it, but I think it sounds good, and I'm pretty happy with it. I think most people think that the most recent work they have is their best, but I think it is our best work, and I'm looking forward to getting down there and recording it next month. And I've been told there'll be a June release, so we'll see if that happens. Actually, Thomas Hooper will be back doing the artwork. The projected title is called November Wolves, and yeah, I like the ring of that. It ties into one of the songs on the record, a song about werewolves. Not the sort of Lon Chaney stuff, which I think is cool, but just kind of tying into the primal nature of man and reflecting on that. That's really what the song is about, and using the werewolf as kind of a metaphor. So, yeah, the record kind of references a lot of things like that. The primal nature of man, bloodlust, darkness, death. All my favorite topics will be on this record. Belief in oneself and the unknown, all those things. We're going to be exploring all that terrain on the next album. So anyone who caught us on the road last month has seen a couple of the songs being performed live. There's the first couple of songs in our set were new. One of the tracks was actually November Wolves. Another one was called Dark. Another track was called Dark Sun Horizon. And then there's another track called Cold. And then the rest of the set was comprised of stuff off of All Empires Fall and Path to Totality. But yeah, man, we got this tour coming up in March. Unfortunately, the record won't be out by then, but we'll be out on the road with Ringworm and Darkest Hour, and I'm hoping to be playing a large portion of the new record on that tour. Our set's relatively short, so we're not going to be able to play the entire record, but yeah, looking to play a couple of these songs out on the road coming up. So 2016 is almost over. It's always a weird time of year for me, man. I guess like in the last 10 years of my life, Christmas and New Year's and all this stuff has gotten real conceptual. Um, yeah, the times used to roll when I was a kid, man. I mean, I had a bigger family, and we'd all get together, and it was all great. And over the years, people pass away. Some people move out of town, living in different states, and it's harder for everyone to get back together and enjoy each other's company for the holidays. So things have gotten real conceptual for me. It's just kind of me and my folks, and a couple other aunts show up, cousins. But it's not, it isn't those rolling good times of my youth anymore. So yeah, I can't really say that I'm excited about this time of year. It's been kind of a rough year, a lot of change in my life, and just trying to stay in that positive frame of mind, trying to stay focused and moving forward. There are times when your brain kind of fucks with you a little bit, tries to push you back into the old ways. But, and I'm not talking about like, anything real heavy. It's just like, you develop all these patterns, which at some point in your life you think, yeah, man, this is what makes me up. But then you realize that these patterns are these self-imposed prisons that you put on yourself. That none of that stuff is real on the external world. It only exists inside your brain. And any real change has to come from within before you can actually change what's outside of you. And I just kind of keep rolling with that idea. Whenever I wake up in the middle of the night feeling that anxiety about, have I made a mistake in my life? Have I made the wrong turn? Did I fuck up somewhere along the way? And at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter, because that stuff is only inside your head. You might have did these things, and maybe you didn't. Maybe you remembered incorrectly. Maybe your feelings changed. Maybe you thought you were doing the right thing at one point in your life, and then later on you decided that wasn't the right thing. Doesn't matter, because you're exactly where you're supposed to be. This is all you really have, is the present. The past doesn't exist, and the future doesn't exist yet. And if you want to do something different, you got to rearrange your thoughts and make that happen. Easier said than done, man. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night, I'm like, fuck. What did I just do? Should I have stayed in school? Should I have stayed at my job? Should I have never moved to New York City? Should I have stayed in Boston? Should I have never left my hometown? Should I have gotten a job at the grocery store? Should I have done this and that? Your mind spins out of control, man. But like I said, in 100 years, it's not going to matter, because we're all going to be dead. We'll all be dust. And the only thing you have is right now. So I'm just trying to roll with that idea. All right, man. So let's talk about the year in review. Everyone has, their top records. Now all the lists are coming out and all the different blogs. And, no one asked me what none of these lists, no one asked me to make any of these lists. No one really solicited my input on any of these things. This is just for me and for you guys, and something I thought's fun. And I like to look back on the year and be like, yeah, what happened this year? Like, what's cool? What did I like? And so, yeah, man, for the top, I go with 5. Honestly, I think 10 is too many. I think that you're hard pressed to come up with 5 solid decisions as what was the best. By the time you get to 7, 8, 9, 10 on your list, you probably only listen to those records maybe 5 times, maybe twice, maybe 3 times. But the top 5 records are records that you fucking listen to, man, that you live with and like take with you, stuff that you think about. So that's what these top 5 are for me. And, this order is kind of arbitrary. I'm not going to say it's like not completely without any thought, but starting at 5, we got Oranssi Pazuzu, Varatelija. Yeah, I know I probably destroyed that. But yeah, man, Oranssi Pazuzu, one of the trippiest black metal bands out there. I was fortunate enough several years ago to see them perform live at Roadburn. They played the same day, the same stage that we played, and I remember hearing about that and being really excited because I had been a fan of theirs for a couple of years at that point. I remember my old roommate Hunter turned me on to them, and the CD was had like an astronaut on it with like this weird bird symbol like up in the corner, and yeah, that was like pretty trippy for especially for a black metal band. And yeah, ever since then I've been a fan, and so their new record, number 5 for me. Number 4 is Ultha, Converging Sins, and it's not a household name, but I'm sure some of you guys have heard of this band. They're German. It features my dear friend Ralf Schmidt on vocals and guitar. And, I've known Ralph for quite a while at this point, and I've experienced all of his bands. And Tombs did a split 12-inch with his old band Planks, and we did a brief tour of Europe together. We toured the States, and, that's not even the beginning of the journey that Ralph and I have had together, but we've been through a lot together, and I've always been a big fan of all of his music endeavors. And I have to say that Ultha is probably the finest work that he's done, and it sounds very European. And if you guys check it out, you'll know what I'm talking about. It's got like a lot of these like European influences. I can hear Breach in there, Cult of Luna, and heavy duty black metal influence like Little Emperor, all the good stuff. Enslaved, a lot of clean guitar work on this record, which I really enjoy. It's like kind of creepy, Deadman-esque intros in some parts of the record. And then, just powerful music, man. And, their songs are pretty long, so it's a time investment. It's not the kind of music you put on to rock the party, but it's definitely a music that you would listen to and really absorb and sort of lose yourself in. So if you have some time where you're by yourself, hang out early evening, put this record on, and just kind of meditate in there, And so that's number 4. Number 3 is, of course, Neurosis, Fires Within Fires. Every time Neurosis puts a record out, they're definitely in my top 5. I mean, they're probably one of the most important bands to me in my life. I mean, I'd say, Neurosis, Black Flag, Slayer, Black Sabbath, those are all bands that really sort of formed my musical background and gave me the inspiration to make music. And Neurosis, when I first heard them, they blew my mind. And the first time I saw them, I thought the world was ending, man. It was like one of the most intense shows I've ever experienced. And, their records connect with me on levels that I'm not even aware of at times. But yeah, their new one's great. Fires Within Fires. Yeah, man, they're aging well. They don't just keep making the same record over and over again. They're in like a different phase to go along with a different perspective on life, and that's kind of the beauty of the band, is that it's mostly pretty much the same guys. There's been some lineup changes from the early era. Von Tild's not an original member. But the core, the creative essence of the band is still basically the same. And you can take it from me. I understand that. I understand how hard it is to keep a band together. Anyone who's familiar with my band Tombs understands that I understand this. So yeah, that's my 3rd. Number 2 is The Violent Sleep of Reason by Meshuggah. And Meshuggah are a band that, though, I would classify them as a death metal band for sure. They kind of straddle a couple of different genres, in my opinion. They're like progressive element, their death metal element. Some of their detractors have accused them of sounding new metal at times. And I'm not going to disagree with that. They got some heavy grooves in their records, some of their records. Some of them are incredibly mathy and very technical. And this new one, The Violent Sleep of Reason, kind of leans more on the tech side. There's a lot of groove, but it's more on that. One of their earlier records, Obzen. I feel like these two records are similar in some ways. But yeah, it's I've been running that one pretty regularly. That's like a driving song for me. And number one, the anticipated record by Darkthrone, Arctic Thunder. And, Darkthrone, one of the original bands for me back in the day around 1994 when I first discovered black metal. It's kind of a funny story. My old band was getting ready to go on tour, and the record label had an office, so we stopped by. I think they were going to give us a check and for tour support or something like that. And they had a bunch of mags, a bunch of zines that we took on the road with us. And one of them was, I don't know, it might have been RIP or Metal Maniacs or, some heavy metal style magazine that doesn't exist anymore. And they had a huge sort of expose article about Norwegian black metal. And at that time, I'd never heard of any of these bands. Burzum, Darkthrone, Emperor, Mayhem was mentioned in there. And the stuff was like fascinating, like the stories, the imagery, everything was there. All the backstory, the murder, Euronymous, church burnings, like all that stuff was all covered in this article and who the main players were and all that stuff. And then later on in that tour, I found the Emperor Enslaved split cassette at some record store somewhere. And that was it. Dipping my toe in the pool of black metal. Yeah, but Darkthrone was among one of those early bands that I first got into. And they were actually, along with Emperor, they were the two bands I really dug right off the bat. Blaze in the Northern Sky. Still one of my favorite records by them. I think that's not to say that I enjoy all of their records equally. There's certain phases of their career which I could, I like more than others. But this new one, Arctic Thunder, is kind of combines a lot of the different eras of the band in some ways. I mean, there's like some straight up like Tom G. Warrior, Celtic Frost, Hellhammer riffing. And then there's like, I forgot what song it is, but there's one point of the record where there's like this total power metal melodic vocal line at the end of the song. And it's great. It's a great record. And you know something, man? No one has this record on their lists. All these like so-called experts out there who are writing about music and they're putting together their year-end lists. They have these. They somehow overlook this record, and I take offense to that because without Darkthrone, there wouldn't be any of these other bands. There would be less of them, which is maybe that's a good thing. But a lot of the people owe Darkthrone, Fenris. They owe him some respect for being a pioneer in this musical genre. But yeah, that's my number one record of the year. And no one else seemed to get on board with that. So I don't know. What are you going to do? So I'm going to move on to some movies. For those of you out there who don't know this, I do another podcast with my buddy Mike Scandato, who Mike's the singer in The Last Stand and in Human. He's been on this podcast a number of times as a guest. Actually, the first episode ever was me and Mike sitting at Daisy's Diner in Park Slope on Fifth Avenue after going to see the Serbian film at the Alpine Theater in Bay Ridge. So, that first episode of Everything Went Black was like the prototype for the Necromaniacs podcast, which is the show I do with Mike. So some of these movies we talked about, some we didn't, and so I'm just gonna start with my fifth movie. So number 5 is The Purge: Election Year. Yeah, I know. It's a bubblegum movie. I'm sure you guys out there probably think the movie's garbage, but I have like a soft spot in my heart for these movies. I saw the first one and I was like, yeah, man, this is kind of a cool idea. Over the top, it's a little satirical, and I've actually seen all of the installments in this series. And so yeah, the election year takes place in election year, and there's definitely a vibe, that parallels what went on in 2016. And so yeah, I don't know. It's got everything in it, man. If it's a fun movie. It's just with a little bit of social satire. Frank Grillo's in it. I'm a big fan of his. He seems like a cool guy. He's in awesome shape, and he's a dude. He's like 54 years old, like shredded. Trains jiu-jitsu every day. I'm down with that. He's a pretty good actor too. So that's number 5. Number 4 is a movie called Approaching the Unknown, and that stars Mark Strong. It's kind of like the dark side or the dark version of the Martian, the movie that's got that guy in it from Good Will Hunting. Not Ben Affleck, the other dude. And so it's like a pretty heavy movie actually, and it's not all fun and games. It's this very lonely, depressing vibe that permeates the whole thing. It's kind of this. The story is this: Mark Strong guy is an astronaut. He's on a one-way mission to Mars, and he's not meant to come back. And his gig is to go there and sort of start the terraforming process of Mars. Because I think by now it's a given that we're destroying planet Earth, and at some point we're gonna have to get off this planet and cultivate some, interstellar habitats for ourselves. So it kind of plays into that storyline, and of course something malfunctions. It looks like it's a heavy duty movie. It's not a fun movie to watch. There's some pretty cool scenes that take place in outer space, and he safely arrives on Mars, but he's there, and who knows if he's going to survive? Who knows if this whole thing was futile? They sent him up there with a bunch of seeds and a way of extracting drinkable water out of the soil or the atmosphere. I forgot. Who knows if it's going to work? A guy might have given his life up in vain, So I don't know. It was cool. I enjoyed it. It was intense, heavy. Maybe ask a lot of questions, about humanity and its place in the universe. So yeah, check it out. Not a lot of people talked about it, so I'm talking about it right now, and it was good. Number 3 is The Green Room, which we talked about on Necromaniacs, an episode that Mike did, and we both really dug this movie. And it stars the late Anton Yelchin, and you also notice that Captain Picard from Star Trek is in it too. And yeah, it's a thriller. The thing I liked about it is it more or less accurately portrayed the sort of day-to-day life of a kind of low-level DIY like punk band being on tour, and the sort of mishaps that befall you, running out of gas, shows falling through, dealing with hostile crowds, that kind of thing. And yeah, basically he's in this Yelchin guy's in a band. The show falls through. Some kid at a radio station connects him with his brother, who's like a white power skin. And they let him jump on an existing show, which takes place out in the middle of the woods at some compound, some skinhead compound. And they get to jump on the bill with these Nazi bands. And as you can imagine, all hell breaks loose. There's murder, gang violence, the couple of chokeouts. There's a very rudimentary display of guard play and the rear naked choke. And there's an armbar in the movie. So yeah, I don't know. It's cool. A lot of people got into this film. I think that this movie showed up on other people's lists as being like a movie to check out, and there was a lot of talk about it. And when Anton Yelchin died, I mean, I got to be honest with you, I don't really know his body of work. He was good in the film, but I couldn't name other films that he was in. Maybe I don't know, but it was a fine movie, and I would definitely recommend it. What are we up to? Number 2. So number 2 was The Witch, directed by Robert Eggers, and me and Mike covered this in Necromaniacs too. But yeah, it's though I don't think it accurately portrays witchcraft per se, like in the Wiccan tradition. I do think that it portrays what people who aren't familiar with the occult might think witchcraft is. It's a good movie. I don't see it as like a document chronicling any kind of, factual studies on witchcraft, but it was definitely fun. There's some supernatural elements in it, which I think are cool. There's like a Black Phillip, this like awesome, goat, looks with the evil eyes and the horns and everything. And yeah, it was cool. It was a good movie. A lot of people got on board with this. I think that a lot of kind of like goth chick groups out there are big fans of this film, and that's cool. It's kind of tailor made for them. I enjoyed it, even though I'm not a goth chick, and yeah, I don't know. It was fun. It was incredible looking. It was like one of the best looking films that come out this year. The acting was great. At times, it was hard to understand what they were saying because it was spoken in this like Old English dialect. And yeah, it was once again like highly recommended. Now, number 1 is a comic book film called Deadpool, and Ryan Reynolds, the star, apparently was very deeply invested in this film, and he really wanted to see an R-rated comic book movie, because I gotta be honest again, I'm not really a big Deadpool I have to be honest with you. I'm not really a big Deadpool fan. I love comics. I've been reading comic books my whole life. I never really got into Deadpool. I mean, he was cool as a backup, showed up in Spider-Man and whatever. When he was in The Punisher, I thought he was cool, but like his own series I never read, and I thought he was kind of a goofy character. But the one thing I did know is that if you were ever going to make a movie out of it, you had to go all in. And that's why I tip my hat to Ryan Reynolds to make sure that he made sure this film was like R-rated. Didn't like, shirk away from any of the graphic content, and it was an enjoyable film, man. It was probably my favorite movie that came out this year, Now, I know this isn't meant to be an all-inclusive list. I'm sure I forgot something. I'm sure once this thing goes up, I'm going to remember a movie or a record that I forgot to put on this list. But that's life, man. I'm not perfect. So yeah, those are my 2 lists. I hope you guys, enjoy that. There's some other stuff that was really cool that I got into in 2016. And one of them is this TV show on HBO called Westworld. And, a lot of people check that out. I really was pretty obsessed with it when it was on. First season I thought was amazing. It kind of connected directly with a lot of, sort of topics that I spent a lot of time meditating on regarding consciousness and, all that trippy stuff about what's life, could life be created? Were we created by gods? Were those gods just some scientist or engineer that was like fucking around with a bunch of cells, and then suddenly this like spark of consciousness was secreted from the primordial ooze? Who knows? Anyway, yeah, it touches on that. That's a pretty heavy topic. I thought it was incredibly well done. Anthony Hopkins is like without parallel. Ed Harris was great. I thought he just chewed the scenery in when he was on camera. Ed Harris has always been like one of my favorite actors. I love him in everything I've seen him in. The dude looks the same age for like 40 years. That's I don't know what maybe he bathes in the blood of children or something. I don't know, but that dude never seems to age. I hope I look as good as he does when I'm his age. I probably won't. I'll probably be dead by the time. I probably won't even make it to his age. But yeah, that was a high point of entertainment in 2016. Um, Something that came up late musically that I'm really into is this new band called Memoriam, and it features members of Bolt Thrower, Benediction, Sacrilege. It's like these British death metal guys, and they have like a 7-inch out. You can find it on iTunes. Look it up on YouTube. It's fucking brutal, mid tempo, just gnarly death metal, like in the style of Bolt Thrower, and it's the two songs I've been running those and really into it, man. It's really good stuff. Apparently they have a new record coming out next year, and if we're lucky, we'll see them on tour. Maybe they'll get them to play like Maryland Death Fest or something like that. That'd be really great to be able to see them, and because I missed Bolt Thrower when they came through, and I've never seen them ever. So Memoriam might be like a very, very cool second run, like a runner-up to not seeing Bolt Thrower. So yeah, that's that's a really great find. This is kind of funny. I've never been a huge Ministry fan. I like them. I have some of their records. I kind of prefer the more electronic stuff they did. I think the song Stigmata is really cool. When they started getting into like the more metallic stylings, it felt a little disingenuous to me. It's like entry level heavy metal, entry level thrash. I don't know. It's like, why would I listen to that record if I could listen to Rain and Blood? That's kind of the vibe I had. It wasn't as interesting as the electronic stuff they did, and it wasn't as like intense and punishing as like Slayer. So why? I had no real reason to get into those records. So when Filth Pig came out, I just completely ignored it, which a lot of people did apparently. A lot of people don't like that record. I remember hearing about that when my old band was on tour with Fetus in Europe, and it was right around that time that Filth Pig was getting ready to be released, or maybe it was available in Europe or something. But I remember the guys in Fetus were talking about it, and sort of. I think I might even have heard a track off the record, and I was like, oh, this is okay, and then quickly forgot about it. That just wasn't my jam. I was more interested in listening to Dead Guy and Bloodlet and bands like that around that time. So, years later, quite a number of years later, 2016, I discovered Filth Pig. It's kind of funny, but yeah, I've been listening to that record almost every day for like the past couple of weeks. And yeah, it's a record that we ran in the van on one of the nights that we had to drive, and I was like, wow, this is like not at all what I expected. I didn't think it was going to be as good as this. Like I knew that they had that Bob Dylan cover, which I think is like a low point of that dude's entire career, in my opinion. I'm not even an Al Jorgensen fan. I think he's like a very talented guy, but inconsistent at best. Definitely a pioneer. Give him respect for what he's done to the genre of whatever you want to call it, industrial electronic music. But I think I might venture to say that Filth Pig's my favorite Ministry album. So anyway, that's about all I got for you guys. It's Monday night. Not much else going on tonight. It's that week before Christmas. A lot of people are starting to leave town. Yeah. I just got more practicing to do. Just getting ready for that recording. And so everybody have a great holiday. Be safe. Have a safe and happy New Year. If things go well and we are able to work it out, Paul's going to come over and we'll do one last episode of the year with him featuring Paul from Black Anvil. But if not, and if we have to wait, you guys have a great holiday, and I'll see you guys out on the road. Cheers.